it's hard to admit we can be wrong or there's some danger there. And so it's good to review. I really appreciate all of you who've joined. Yeah. So I think what we'll be doing is speaker Dr. Jamila will be speaking for a length of time, and after that we will go into Q&A. Yeah. So please hold on to your questions till then, and so I think we'll just begin. I want to just take a couple of minutes to introduce Dr. Jamila. Yeah. Dr. Jamila is a psychiatrist by practice. She graduated from the Armed Forces Medical College, Pune, and completed her postgraduate studies in yeah, psychological medicine from the University of Bombay. She has served in the Indian Army. Jamila has contributed to many books and journals, and she's written extensively on social issues and on topics that affect our community as well. And she's a leading voice on many issues that we face today in our nation. So we are thankful that Dr. Jamila has joined us, and so over to Dr. Jamila to speak on this topic. Are we raising a selfish generation? Yeah. Welcome, Dr. Jamila.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Abhijit. I must congratulate Abhijit for always thinking of new topics and really subjects which nobody else really goes into. So I really appreciate that. And it also makes the speakers and those who are asked to take the subjects, it makes them have to introspect and look at various issues, do a certain amount of research, and then sort of put it all together. So this was actually, I thought this would be an easy topic to take, but actually when I looked at the studies and when I tried to find information on actual studies about this, I found very little. So we have this sort of impression that the succeeding generations are selfish and the succeeding generations are not living up to the standards that we expect or we have set for them. So there is this kind of feeling among the older generations, right? So this feeling is there. But actually, when you look at it, I'll tell you what the studies say, and let's see where it goes from there. All right. So generations are counted in a certain number of years. Okay, each generation is officially 30 years, but obviously there's a lot of overlap. So the way they look at it is right now there are 5 generations which are discussed. Okay. Can I share my screen?
Yes, you can. Yes.
Okay. So right now there are several generations which are within the population of every country. You have the silent generation, which is people who are born till 1945. Okay, I don't know whether there would be many people of that age group within our group today. Probably not. Probably there are several people among the baby boomers, that is 1946 to 64. I come in that category. Okay, so I am of the baby boomer generation. I think there will be a few others who are in that generation. After that, there's Generation X from 1965 to 1979. Abhijit, do you come in that one?
Yes, very much.
Yes, but you come in that. So somebody else is raising their hands, and Sonal, you're there. You probably are in that group too. So there are lots of people who are in Generation X, right?
No,
Okay.
I'm
Then
in baby boomers.
you're in baby boomers. Okay. I didn't realize. I thought you were in Generation X. Okay. Then you have Generation Y, which is the generation generally which are perhaps the children of the baby boomers would be, so Generation Y and Generation X as well. So 1980 to 1994, okay? Then you have Generation Z or Z, 1995 to 2009. And then the latest generation, which is Generation Alpha again, right, till 2024. Okay, so now the question is selfishness or selflessness, is it limited to any one generation, right? Because the challenge that Abhijit put to me was to ask whether we are raising a selfish generation. Are we raising selfish children? So the question which I was pondering is selfishness or the opposite, selflessness, is it limited to any one generation? And is it true that we are raising selfish kids in this generation, whichever, X, Y, Z, alpha? Okay. So now look at the characteristics of each. Okay. That's what we need to have some kind of idea about this. So the people who were born before 1945, those people are sort of known to be very civic minded. Okay. Generally politically and socially conservative. Generally, the families stayed together. Okay. Generally, those people would stick at their jobs for a longish time. They wouldn't jump jobs or anything like that. And they usually tended to have large families. So the baby boomers, of which several of us are there here, most of us would have, like the previous generation, they would have been large families. So you would have had at least three people in our family, or four people in our family, right? Or even five sometimes. So because you have a lot of siblings and all that, there is a lot of family connectedness. But also this generation decided that now we're going to have less children. Okay. There was women's liberation which came up, and there was the whole access to reproductive care and health care and knowledge of how to do all this. Education became more general. So people were able to limit their families. And they also, this generation started having very democratic families. Okay, so the baby boomers' families are different from their parental families in the sense that they give more voice and choice to their children, and their whole style of parenting is more democratic than the previous generations, which was more autocratic. All right. So this is the baby boomers generation. Now they tend to learn to manage computers and all that, but they're generally not as tech savvy as the others, as Sonal and I. Sonal is pretty okay, but I'm not so great with the computer. But you learn, you pick up, but obviously you're not as adept as the succeeding generations. Now go to the next generation, Generation X, for instance. What is Generation X all about? Generation X was at the time when the baby boomers, like many of us, had sort of the women were also into jobs, where many of the educated women got into jobs. So these children were often children where both parents were working. So these kids learned to be very independent, and they learned to be very self-reliant. And they also learned to sort of, manage technology and all pretty efficiently. But they saw the rise of technology. Okay, they were learning technology at a faster rate than Generation X. But then they still valued family, and they valued also things like, independence, travel, that sort of thing was there, Generation X. Then you come to Generation Y. Okay, this is the millennial generation. This generation also, uh, they sort of saw the internet come into being. So there was a time when they were without the internet, and then they learned the values of the internet. So they learned to handle technology and all that, but they also learned to work in teams and learn family values. Okay, they are pretty restless in that. They call restless millennials. They do value a lot of work-life balance. Okay, perhaps because they saw what happened to the previous generations. Now, the next generation, Generation Z, okay, this generation is the one which has grown up with social media and internet and all that all the time. They didn't see it come to being during some part of their life. They always had it. So they are connected in a way that nobody else is, and they sort of live 24/7 on their phones, and they learn their information and everything from the net and social media. So this is the group of Generation Z people. Now, this Generation Z people, they have a lot of global access. So they are interested in global issues, okay? Global warming or global issues, things like that. It's not so much local the way the previous generation was. Okay, the silent generation and baby boomers are more local, whereas generation X, Y, and Z have sort of branched out. X has already gone into learning languages and diversity and all that. Generation Y and Z are totally getting into a global kind of setting. And generation Z, generation Alpha, of course, is the latest generation, which is okay. It is to come. It's still to develop its various characteristics. Now, the issue is what I tried to find on the net, and there's anecdotal evidence of all this, but actually the actual studies on this are very few. And the actual studies showing that one generation is selfish or one generation is not selfish is actually not adequate for us to make any conclusion on this. All right. What is clear is that every generation is different in the way they handle things, different in the way they respond to things, different in the way they see family or work or travel or recreation or whatever. Every generation sees it differently because of the way that they have grown up. All right. So the silent generation they did not have access to any social media. Their news came from radio and from the newspapers, right? Now, the baby boomers, they had radio. They slowly started perhaps getting a little bit of television. Generation X had more television, and maybe a little bit of email and things had started coming up by then. But Generation Y was completely into, a more global sort of thing. So this is the difference in the way they've been brought up, which causes differences in the way they react to things. Just as an example, I was looking at the way that each generation gives. Okay. Now, the silent generation gives money, and they often give money locally. So, to local charities, they give a lot of money. They're very generous with their money, and they're very social and civic minded, but in a local context. They will give to their church, they will give to their faith based organizations. Okay, that sort of thing. The baby boomers have started going outside that. So they may give to larger charities like children's charities, international NGOs, that sort of thing, which had started to come up at their time. All right. Now, Generation X and Y give less money. So we could say, oh, they're selfish. They don't give money. They don't want to give money. They're selfish. But the fact is that they might not give money, but that's because they don't have as much money as the previous generations. The previous generations have worked, they have saved money, they have, as it has been a saving generation, whereas Generation X and Y tend to spend a little more, but then they do like to get involved themselves. They like to volunteer. They like to spread the word. They like to be participatory in the NGO or whatever it is. Okay. And they found that Generation Z or Generation Z likes to support international and global causes. That's how they think. They think in terms of international and global causes because they're all the time connected, on the net. So they don't have a small way of looking at it at local level, but they think at a global level. So you can see that each generation is involved and interested in giving. It's not that there is any finding that any generation is not involved. They do want to be involved, but the way is different. So, which is why the next question that comes up then is that is then selfishness, if it is not confined to any generation, is it then just a human tendency to selfishness? Is it just a larger picture of selfishness which everybody has? And as Christians, and I think many faith-based groups would think that, right? That it's a human tendency that all of us have this temptation to get plunged into selfish pursuits, selfish ways of living. Okay. Evolutionists and biologists would say this is just a survival instinct. It is your instinct to save yourself, which makes you behave in a certain way. So if there is a choice of two people getting onto a boat, your survival instinct would be that I want to get on. I don't want to let the other person get on. And there's a famous scene in Titanic, isn't it? Could Leonardo DiCaprio also have fit onto that board, okay, the headboard or bed rest, whatever it was? Couldn't he also have fit onto that board? Did he really have to die? Why did that happen? Okay, so basically, it's the survival instinct which may be an excuse for selfishness. So, for instance, there's this famous prayer which some pastors have used. It's always stuck in my mind. So there are people who pray, no? When you pray only for your family needs. That's the main thing that you're praying for. Me and my wife, Joan, our son John and his wife Jade, us four, no more. So there are people who pray and who are committed to God and all that, but it's for myself. It's about my needs. It's about my aspirations. It's about my goals. It's about my children and their problems. So our main concern can be, it is possible that our selfishness is such that even our prayers can be a sign of how self-centered we are, and that unfortunately is the human tendency to sin. I've taken one example from recent events. You remember this, the electoral bonds issue? Anyone remembers?
I do.
Yeah, Sonal, that was a big thing, wasn't it? The
Yeah.
electoral bonds was such a big thing. It was supposed to be the largest scam, perhaps in the world, a political scam, but it has just got forgotten. And the issue was that human selfishness and human sin was so evident in that whole thing. Large sums of money were given to political parties across the spectrum, but largely to the governing party. But who were the people who were giving and why were they giving? Was it out of a sense of benevolence or giving because they wanted to help the political party or help the political process in the country? No, it was not for that. It was 33 firms were listed. This is only one, 33. There were actually many more. These 33 firms were under investigation by the CBI, the income tax, or the enforcement directorate for various things, serious crimes like fraud and money laundering and things like that. In large sums of money where they were sort of under investigation. But then what happened is that these various firms gave large electoral bonds. The whole thing is not here, but if you were to look at it, you can see here, the amount is 100 crores, 75 crores, 105 crores. Just see the amount of money which is given by this one company, Future Gaming. Okay, this is run by a guy called Miranda, if I'm not wrong. And he gave all this money, and the cases against him then were dropped. Mega Engineering is the same, Vedanta Limited is the same. Just look at the amount of money that was given. And this was selfishness at a clear, very, very clear level. That money was being given to save their own company, to save themselves from being investigated or whatever it was. Okay, so I'm going to go to the next slide, and I want you to put in the chat that do you think that any of these things, which of these are generation specific? Any of these are generation specific acts of selfishness? Not sharing information or tasks at work. Is that, you think, any generational problem, or is it something which happens across the board? Any comments? You can put it into the chat.
Any response, friends? Any comment? Yeah.
Okay, there are messages in the chat. Yeah, what do you think? Not generational. Earlier, we shared information which helped each other. Generational. Okay, Anisa, I think it's generational. Not sharing information.
Sorry, Anisa is my daughter's name.
Okay.
Somehow it came. Okay.
All right, no problem.
Yeah, I feel I'm Sujana. Yeah, I feel it is generational because in older generation they refrain from sharing the tasks at work. I
Okay,
mean,
all right. You feel that it's generational, all right?
yeah.
But, I would. Okay, we'll leave it at that. You perhaps it is more characteristic of older generations to share information at work, but I'm not completely sure because older people at work can also sometimes not share information, no? Particularly if a younger person comes in as a senior and the older person has been bypassed for promotion, do they always cooperate at work? No, I don't think so. I think there are instances where it doesn't happen.
No, they don't. They don't.
They don't. It can happen. Anyway, we'll pass on that. Blocking the free left lane. Is that selfish? And which generation does it more? Is there any such thing? Paying servants poorly. Do we all do that?
All the older generations pay them less.
Older generation might do it a little less. Okay.
No,
Taking
they
the
pay
bigger-
more. They pay less. The older generations pay less.
older generation tends to pay less. So the younger generation doesn't pay less. Okay. Taking the bigger piece of cake. That's very much children do it. But but then do you think that the baby boomers would have also done it as children? When we were children, did we do the same? Is it
No,
a
our
child?
parents would have watched us.
Our parents would have watched us. But if we could, we would probably like the bigger piece of cake, right? Anyway, not sharing household chores despite both parents working, both partners working. Is this generational? Do younger couples share work more?
Yeah, it's generational, I feel.
Generational? The older
Yeah,
couples don't
Don't share the chores.
Younger
Yeah.
couples tend to share more. All right.
Yes, yeah.
Cheating on your spouse and creating problems in the family. You know, when you cheat on your spouse, the whole family gets distressed, children are distressed, the spouse is distressed. Is this a generational thing? Any particular generation more prone to it?
I don't think so. It is same
Across
with
the
all the
board?
generation.
Okay. What about spending time on the phone when other family members are around? Is that a selfish thing to do?
Yes.
And who does it more? Is it a generational thing?
Yeah, the newer generation.
Newer
The younger
generation does
people.
it more. Okay, newer generation, younger people tend to do it more. Ignoring a friend's emotional needs.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Ignoring a friend's emotional needs, is that a generational thing or do all generations do it?
I think the older generation did not share emotions.
The
Way
older
more.
generation did not share emotions at all. Okay? Now, showing less income so you save on tax. Is that a selfish thing to do? You're not sharing your money with the government, which will be shared with the poor, which will be used for the poor, for work for roads or projects. When we don't share our income and don't pay our proper income tax, is that a selfish thing to do? And who is doing it?
Saving income tax using all legal means is the most selfless thing that anyone can do for their family.
For the
Because
family.
the government is the most inefficient in using money.
Okay, that may be your point of view.
It is actually a selfless act if you use legal means.
That's an interesting point of view. Okay, and that perhaps is a generational idea in itself. Okay, because the older generations would think that you should share money with the government so that it can be shared with the poor, used for development work, all that sort of thing. Okay, Abhijit, I think, yeah, okay. All right. I just put these on. Obviously, there's no hard and fast rule to all this. Okay. The idea that I wanted to share was that sometimes there are generational issues here, particularly on the phone and perhaps a little bit of work. You know, maybe the older generation was a little more better at work and paying their servants, and all. Perhaps the older generation did not do as well. Okay. But then a lot of these are either personality issues or age-related issues, right? Like small children want to take the bigger piece of cake. They don't think that they should share. Older people realize that they should share, right? So some of these are generation specific, perhaps. Some of these are not. But on the whole, I think we will all agree that it's a general tendency in human beings to be selfish. Okay, and this is the point that I want to bring across, that we must not think that any particular generation has got a monopoly on selfishness. Okay, we are all selfish and we all have to deal with this in various ways. Okay, so this is the challenge. I want to. Okay, right. Right. So now the challenge is, what do children learn and where do they learn it from? If you're going to talk about bringing up children and children learning selfishness or selflessness, where do they learn it from? Now we have to realize that children learn what they see and hear, not necessarily what they are told. So you learn, you are living out your experiential learning is what is actually important, not only what is told to someone. So let's look at what are the things that children see around us in our communities. What are they learning? What are they learning from the world in all these various areas? What are they learning from politics? What is politics like? Should we be selfish or selfless? What are they learning from social media? Are they learning selfishness or selflessness? What are they learning from advertisements? What are they learning from films? What are they learning from friends, from family, from the various aspects of each person's life? Now, if you look at politics in India, for instance, what picture do we get? For instance, I think that was Binoy who said that politicians and governments are so bad and so inefficient. So this is the idea that we all have, isn't it? That governments are corrupt, that nothing is working well, that it's everybody for themselves. So this picture here is horse trading, right? When one party tries to buy the MPs, this is the political violence that we see in India. This is the communal violence, which is every elections we see our politicians whipping up these Hindu-Muslim, Hindu-Christian, Muslim-Christian, whatever it is, these anti-religious sentiments so that they can get votes. Corruption. We looked at the electoral bonds issue. So the whole picture that young people are learning from this is that selfishness pays, selfishness is fine. Okay, you have people who defect, people who have been, for instance, I always think Milind Deora, who stood for elections, his father was a congressman for so many years from Bombay South, right, Mumbai South, and suddenly he has switched parties. He switched his whole belief system almost, right? Just for the sake of a seat in the assembly. Okay, so politics teaches us this. What do you learn at the workplace? I had to take a session for NMBF sometime back on this whole work stress. And just think about it. What are we learning? Are we learning that the workplace is a selfless place to be, that you can contribute, that you can help? Or are we learning that it's every person for themselves, boss wants to get a name, try to cut the other and come forward, okay? You work so hard, you get stressed, and there's harassment, and there's sexual problems, and there's, 70-hour work week, and somebody saying, so a lot of the picture sometimes can be this kind of mixed picture, which can contribute to sometimes children getting the idea that it's okay to be selfish. What about the faith communities? Unfortunately, in India, all our faith communities have been having these problems, right? You have some of them who are convicted rapists. You have some people who are covering up sexual abuse, okay, in our faith community as well as in other faith communities. You have violence. This is the Muslim Brotherhood, which espouses and allows assassinations and violence. And we see often that sometimes religious people are the ones who troll others the most. They are sometimes seen as the most bigoted or rigid about issues. They can be really nasty to each other. So what is the faith community projecting? That are you supposed to be selfless? Are you supposed to be selfish? What picture are children getting? Look at advertisements, okay? Advertisements are a pretty demonstrative of how society teaches us to value selfishness, right? It's all about me getting nice skin, right? So it's about my complexion. It's about me having this fancy bag costing 1 lakh or whatever it is, okay, Louis Vuitton. It's about this guy who you wear this Old Spice aftershave and you become a man, right? You become very strong and very manly and whatever it is. Or else it's about having a new toy. So you have this car and you go out and play. So you're having a sort of hedonistic lifestyle. So this is what advertisements teach us, right? And films can be a mixture of both. Okay, I didn't take anything on films, but you know how it is. There are some films which help us to value selflessness and family values and all that. But there are a lot of films which go the other way, which sort of talk about selfishness and violence and how violence pays and each different sexual issues. And so a lot of the films can also have this mixed picture. What about social media, which children are on all the time? Does it teach you to be selfless? Yes, sometimes, but it also can present a picture of posters who are, talking about their achievements, the fun they're having, the games, the travel, the food, their music, friends. They don't talk anything about the darker side of their own stories, no? Their failures or their problems or how they are participating in something. It's all very hedonistic and a sort of self-centered picture which is presented. So children and young people or whoever watches this can be prone to learning from all this, that selfishness pays, that it's better to look after yourself. This is the picture that is often present. So the challenge is, now, if this is how the world is, right? If the world around us is constantly presenting a picture which encourages selfishness and self-centeredness, what can we parents do to bring up kids who are the opposite of selfish? That is the challenge before us. Okay, before I go to that, I want to show you one more example. These were the mottos of the various schools, okay? I just looked it all up because I've often thought of this, that the mottos of schools have changed over the years. Over the years, the whole focus has shifted. So look at these, for instance, okay? Can you just read these out to yourself? Just look at these mottos. Dare to dream, learn to excel. Freedom to think, empowered to be. To develop learners who are passionate about learning, helping others, and being positive contributors to society. That's one, right? Knowing how to see. Excellence in deed. Palikudam School wants to make children who are aware of their talents as well as their limitations, unafraid of pursuing their dreams and living life to its fullest. Vidyashilp says it wants to encourage creativity and diversity. Heritage School wants to have a learning community where each is free to be and grow towards the realization of their highest human potential through harmonious integration of spirit, heart, mind, and body. Legacy School, 1984 founded. They want children to become reflective individuals who will discover themselves. And Chrysalis School wanted to help children to excel by understanding them, guiding them on the right path, and strengthening their self-belief. Any comments about this? What is the whole stress here? Okay, you compare these. Okay, these are the older schools. You can see Bishop Cotton's founded in 1859, Bombay Scottish in 1847, Loreto in 65, Le Martiniere in 86, DAV schools in 1985, St. Joseph's in 1858, St. Columba's in 1941, Jesus and Mary Convent 1919, Delhi Public School, Mathura Road, that is the first one, 1949, and Sri Ram School 1988. Okay, these are the older schools. Look at their mottos. Overcome evil with good, perseverance and faith in God, receive that you may give, by labor and constancy, from ignorance lead me to truth, faith and toil, dare to be wise, sincere and constant, to serve with love, that's Jesus and Mary Convent. Delhi Public School is service before self, and Sri Ram School, from knowledge comes humility. Okay, any comments about the difference between the two?
Yeah. Dr. Jamila, can you unshare and share the screen again? There are some scribbling lines that have appeared on your screen.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened.
Yeah, you need to disable it actually from your annotation, but it's okay. If you can unshare and share it again, it will disappear.
Okay, I'll stop share
And then reshare it,
and
yeah.
share it again. Okay, fine. Okay, yeah, it's gone. See, that's the difference between baby boomers and Generation X. All right. Yeah, so any comments about this? Older education, yes, James, older has education for service, newer has for selfishness. Service-mindedness versus self-mindedness. to achieve
And
success through hard work and thrift. Okay.
nothing much about the school, but obviously the older founders, they had some sense of service to the society. But I don't think that motto would have made any difference to the school or its people
Yeah,
or
I'm
the
just I'm
students.
just talking about the mottos. That this was the vision with which they started.
Correct, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm sure there would have been some effect because you start with a vision, at least for some years, you would sort of continue with that. So as you all noticed, service was the theme of older schools. It was very clear, right? Service before self, learn to receive, to give, things like that. It's very clear, giving versus taking. These are just words with no real meaning. Okay, Binay, yeah, anyway, let's hope that they had some meaning. They started off with good intentions. The second lot, no, the newer schools, it's not exactly selfishness, but it's sort of focusing on the person's potential and creativity and stuff like that. A couple of them do say being positive contributors to society. Ascend International School. That was interesting. There was only one I found which had this very positive sort of thing. But most of them otherwise are focused on the individual's capacity and very less of
It's
emphasis
about success, I feel, even
yeah,
success.
success, excelling, creativity, that sort of thing. Talents, developing your own excellence, that sort of thing. Less focus on others and society. And it's a very interesting thing, isn't it? That uh, this is how the school motto has changed over years. In fact, Delhi Public School itself, if you look at the first one, started in 1949. This was the motto: service before self. Okay. Yeah, when it started, it had this good emphasis. Now, Delhi Public School, Karnal, founded in 2007, this is its vision statement. It doesn't have a motto. Provides high quality, comprehensive education with a firm moral base that addresses the academic needs of the students within a sheltering and nurturing environment. So you can see the absence of reaching out, the absence of service to others. So this is something which we as parents need to be aware that we are going to get less of help from outside to do this. So the job of parents to teach their children to be selfless is very important. Now, as I said, children learn what they experience. Okay. So what does our child experience in the house with his parents, with his community is very important. And this poem is a very old poem written by, I don't remember who, but it's clear, isn't it? If a child lives with criticism, he learns to condemn. If a child lives with, what's that? Lives with something which I can't read, he learns to fight.
Hostility.
Oh, hostility, he learns to fight. If a child lives with ridicule, he learns to be shy. If a child lives with shame, he learns to be guilty. If a child lives with tolerance, he learns to be patient. If a child lives with encouragement, he learns confidence. If a child lives with praise, he learns to appreciate. If a child lives with security, he learns to have faith. If a child lives with approval, he learns to like himself. If a child lives with acceptance and friendship, he learns to find love in this world. So, what does a child need to live with in order to learn service? That would be the question, isn't it? That because service, for instance, is not mentioned in this poem. But the question that would be on our minds is, what do we need to expose our children to? What do they need to live with in order to develop a service mindedness? And I think the most important thing is that they should see that service and service mindedness in their parents and in their family. So we need to role model cheerful service even in mundane and tedious situations. A lot of life is not easy. A lot of life is hard, right? A lot of life is mundane, washing up vessels, tedious things like cleaning or whatever. There's lots of tedious work which goes on. But do we role model that we cheerfully do this service for each other on a day-to-day, daily basis sometimes, even when we don't really have the energy or whatever, we still do it. Do we role model this? As we do, the children will see it. Do we role model social connectedness to our family, to our friends, and to our community? If we role model this, that we connect with our family, even with difficult members of our family, we forgive them, we connect with them, we do not fight with them, we make concessions for the crankiness, or we make concessions for problems or illness or whatever it is, that we reach out to friends, even those who are not maybe in very well-to-do situations as much as us or whatever it is? Do we look only for rich friends? That sort of thing. What are we showing to our children? Are we selfless in our friendships? What about community? Do we go out of our way to help others, to open our house to others, to welcome others into our family, to be a place where people can find rest and refuge? Is our house open to the community? If children see this, they will learn that, okay, my house is also going to be an open home for everybody because this is how I have seen, I have lived it out. Do we role model taking initiative to reach out to others, especially to the poor? Do we show them that the needs of the poor in India, the needs of the poor in our state, it is of concern to us? Do we find ways to show them that we are being involved in all this? We give and we volunteer or whatever we do. Do we allow the children to see that? Do they experience this in their life? Do we role model giving a lot of time, money, and also things? Are we willing to give away our things, or do we hold on to things? Okay, that's something which each of us has to deal with and struggle with. Okay, as they see this in our lives, it will be more natural for them to copy this behavior, okay, to be interested in the poor, in the community, in the family, okay, in all these kind of things, in service in the home, in household chores, whatever. What about exposure? Do we expose our children to the darker side of life? Or do we only take them to fancy restaurants or movies or malls? But do they also see the needs of the poor? It's strange that we can live in India and have our sights set on what is happening in only, say, the US or Europe or Australia or whatever it is. The children can live their lives only knowing what happens with their particular Korean band, right? Or whatever Japanese stuff they're watching or American stuff they're watching, whatever. But do they see the needs of the poor here? I mean, do they know what the life of our servants is like? Do they know what the life of the elderly is like? Do they know how difficult it is for those who are sick? Do they know what the mentally ill go through? Do we talk about all these things? Do we expose them to all these things? Do we allow them to see and understand and participate in the issues of the Dalits, for those who have a different sexual orientation, those who have disability? So how are we going to expose them to all this? This is the challenge to each one of us, isn't it? So if we get involved with this work ourselves, then they will be involved. Otherwise, if we expose them to friends who have these problems, or we take them to places and NGOs which work with these things, only then they will be exposed to it. And they will understand that there is a more difficult side to life than just the serials they're watching and the football they're watching or whatever sort of fun they're going through. Give them opportunity to participate in helping all these groups. Okay, in a larger level, in church, in NGOs, in places which are doing this work, encourage participation in helping the elderly members of your family and others. Encourage them to help in helping your friends. Encourage group activities in church, in the youth fellowship or whatever, to reach out to people like this. Okay. I remember one of the youth activities was to make soup for the poor who had come to the hospital near the church. Okay, so these young people all made soup for those people and took it and served it to them. So do things like that. There are lots of things which kids can do. Encourage group activity to reach out to others in service. Internships at different NGOs, it should not always be internships which will get them ahead in life. You can help them to get internships also at places where they can serve, where they can do something which benefits them, not just to get it on their CV that they did it, but actually to do it because it is a good thing to do. Okay. So basically, this is what I wanted to share. I wanted to share that selfishness is not confined to any generation. Okay. Yes, there are different issues with the different backgrounds, particularly tech backgrounds that each generation grows up with, which can create a sort of sometimes a little isolation, perhaps in the newer generation, where they are always on their phones or something like that. But that does not mean that they are necessarily more selfish or anything. they probably still want to get involved in social causes, particularly global causes, international causes. That is their thing. But we can expose them through our role modeling and through our active efforts at exposing them and giving them opportunity to participate. That will help them to experience and live out and internalize the whole service and selflessness aspect, which is part of every religion. And in the Christian faith, we are told that the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for others. So if we are people who pray and who teach the children about all this, that would be a natural part of what we teach the children. Okay, right. So I'll stop here and we can